Welcome to the RePsychled podcast, where we discuss everyday issues from a mental health perspective. We are your hosts, Dr. Rashonda Strickland,
Dr. LaFanya Jones-Hines,
and Dr. Nichelle Wall. Now, don't get it twisted. We're not going to be your stereotypical therapist.
What we will be is informative, down to earth, a little spicy, and vulnerable.
All right, interns, turn up your volume, grab your pen and paper. It's supervision time. As a reminder, this podcast is not meant to take the place of a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
Welcome back to session 63, Forgive Me Not.
Okay, interns. Before we already laughing. Before we get into it, I have got to give y'all this funny, okay? So I sent the ladies and my husband this video yesterday of this young lady twerking. She calls it Tuesday twerking. And when you see this video, well, for me, once I heard her say something about moving them shoulders, I knew this was getting ready to be a disaster. But, you know, I was like, I
was thinking it might have worked if she was doing like a loop kind of twerk, like in one from the 90s. That might have worked.
Bucking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this wasn't that. So her husband sits up in the bed, and I think he thought he was about to get a show or something. But he sits up in the bed. She says, okay, you got to move your shoulders. You got to straighten up your back because it's up to your husband to break your back and, you know, things like that. And she proceeds to twerk.
Her shoulders.
Yes. Yeah. And then her hair hit her face.
It was like back convulsions. That's what it was.
That's what it was. And see, for me, you know, I'm a dancer, so I've seen people, you know, lack that skill all my life. It was the husband laughing for me. And then he tried to go into the restroom to get himself together. Yeah. And then he came back out and started back and said, "You're still doing it."
Because it's wrong.
Because it's wrong. So if you all see this video on Facebook, because it was on Facebook, and you know this young lady, have her to DM us because Dr. Wall, Dr. Jones-Hines, or Dr. Strickland.
No,
I know she says she don't dance, but she
know how to do that.
She can twerk.
No,
because I've seen her do
Please
it.
don't put me out there like
on
that.
a husband.
No, I cannot.
So Dr. Wall and Dr. Jones-Hines is willing to teach you the proper way to twerk. Mm-hmm. And now, and the other thing is, please don't have a grudge against your husband for laughing because it was hilarious. It really was.
Like his face was so red.
Yes. Y'all,
he was wheezing.
Yes.
He had that laugh like you gonna snort soon.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah, he was bent over.
Yes.
It was funny though.
So, as you all heard me just say, today's topic is going to be about holding grudges and making amends. So holding a grudge means harboring anger, bitterness, resentment, or other negative feelings long after someone has done something to hurt you. And at times, grudges can develop after perceiving that someone is against you or means you some sort of harm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting that the term holding a grudge comes from the French word grossière. Now, I'm not French, okay? Spanish, okay? So it could be pronounced different with a sh in there, but you know, the point is, it means grouch in English. You know what I mean? So that automatically took me to Sesame Street.
I know, I was thinking like Oscar.
Not Sesame Street.
But it means to grumble or to complain, cry out. So I was like, sink the word.
I like it.
Okay. So what was the longest, if y'all can remember, what was the longest grudge you all have held and against who? And if you don't want to say the person's name, that's fine. You can just say, you know, something else.
The longest grudge.
Myself.
Okay. Explain.
Well, I'm not going to go into too many details because people don't need to know my business like that. But just some choices that I had made that led to like some severe like heartache, personal heartache. And so being able to come to grips with that, get over it, and not continue to hold myself to this rigid expectation, you know? So that was probably, I'd probably say that one.
Okay.
Myself.
Mm-hmm. I don't know really. Because when I think of grudge, I think of extended amounts of time. And I can't think of anybody that I've like for extended amounts of time that I've decided like I'm going to be mad about this thing with you specifically for, you know, because of this incident. But if I had to guess, I'd probably say maybe a few months. I mean, if I'm really going to be conservative, I'd rather not say who, but, you know, of course it's some transgression that happened, you know, between you and that person. And there just didn't seem to be any kind of real reconciliation about it. So it's one of those like agree to disagree kind of situations. So then you're just kind of left there with like, okay, now what do we do?
And I would have to say mine was with men. Like we were talking about in our previous session about, you know, how people say they want a particular person or characteristics in a person, and then they look for something else or, you know, whatever the case may be. You know, we talked about some of our experiences with dating. And so because of some of my experiences with dating, I took it out on men that I dated.
Yeah, I definitely. And see, my mind attributes that to bitterness from it, like, but
that's a negative emotion that can cause you to hold a grudge.
Yeah, I agree. Wow,
because I definitely attribute it to bitterness. That was my emotion. Well, one of them.
Yeah, because I think I've definitely been in the bitterness category before, for sure.
Yeah.
Mixed in with a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So how do you think holding a grudge affects people?
Before we go on that, can we say some more of the characteristics? Because they may not really be thinking they holding grudges.
Okay. Yeah. Let's do
like
that.
What it looks like. Absolutely. You know, one of the first things that kind of comes to mind for me, you know, what it looks like, the most obvious is you distance yourself from that person. You know, you slowly start cutting off communication. You know, some grudges can end instantly, and it's like all of you just, the relationship is done, and, you know, I don't want to talk to you anymore because you hurt me for whatever reason. Some people kind of do that slow, you know that meme where like Homer Simpson backs into the hedges. They do that slow like fade out. Yeah, the fade to black. Or it can be, you know, like snide comments, you know, just saying these really weird kind of undercutty types things because you are eliciting or fishing for an apology or some sort of acknowledgement, but you don't get it. Those are like the first few that off the dome.
I think something that's always when you hold a grudge is the persistent ruminations because you keep running with this narrative in your head. It's like you're trying to keep score of how you felt, like you're not allowing yourself to resolve those emotions and resolve the situation within yourself. You know, you can't always resolve it with the person, of course, but you consistently and persistently are thinking about the incident.
And I would add you lose your cool over unrelated situations. So like you could be at a party, and as soon as the person that you may be holding a grudge comes in, it's like, oh my, why is this Kool-Aid so cold? So then you start just, why is this carpet brown?
Yeah.
You know, you just start getting just frustrated.
On edge.
Yes, for no reason.
Oh, for sure.
You also tend to see yourself as a victim and blame other people.
That is true. I can't remember. Did one of you say you avoid people?
Well, I said you kind of back away from and start, you know, fading to black.
Okay.
Or some people are very drastic and they do the immediate snip and cut people out.
You start to feel bitter, which was one of the things that we were talking about just a second ago.
Yeah.
It's a bit of an anxiety spiral, to be honest. Like you just in a little hurricane by yourself, spinning.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Because when you start getting that butterfly feeling when you see them, it's like, what is that? What is wrong with me? And then you start feeling irritated.
Yeah.
Side note, somebody was talking about, I don't know if I should date this guy because I don't get butterfly feelings. And this other person was like, you mean you're not anxious? You feel safe with the person?
Yes.
I was like, makes sense.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Might have to dive into that one day. That kind of leads into what I was thinking, like when you hold a grudge, it just makes it easier for you to kind of go with that as your style of dealing with situations. You don't confront stuff head on. So then you just start sweeping stuff under the rug and holding on to things, which, of course, then leads to some people stop trusting themselves after a while because if I keep getting into situations that cause me to feel resentful towards the people in my life, then is it something with me? It's not necessarily always them.
Well, and then the other thing is sometimes people feel nothing toward the person, which can also be a dangerous thing as well because feeling nothing requires effort.
Most people don't think that, but it does. Just the same way as not making a choice is making a choice.
Yeah, because you essentially become emotionally detached. And what people don't understand is that when you become emotionally detached from negative emotions, you also detach from positive emotions entering into your life as well.
I think it's important that people realize, like, if you've truly healed from something, an event can come up as neutral, but you shouldn't be numb. Like, you're like, I remember when I felt that. I remember, blah, you know what I mean? But it shouldn't be like, I don't feel nothing.
And that's one of the things I don't let my clients say either, that I feel numb. I don't know what that means. So you got to describe what numb means to you or what numb feels like for you.
They emotionally wrap themselves in bubble wrap. It's a form of self-protection.
Which is really not protecting.
Not from yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So then when we think about holding a grudge and kind of how it shows up or what it looks like, where do you think that we originally learned the idea of what grudges are? Do you think it's something that we observe first, experience first, or it's an innate human behavior?
I think it could be all three. I think it's innate, but I think we learn how to do it by observing, especially when you become an adult. So like when you're a child and, your parents are raising you, you get consequences, you get punishments. But when you become an adult, like if you and have adult friendships or you get married or have a significant other, you don't really know how to give consequences because we're all adults. So why do I can't put you on punishment. So holding a grudge, I think, is a way for us to control in some sort of way, maybe control how we feel, how to control how they deal with us.
It's a bit of an adult temper tantrum, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I didn't really witness people holding grudges in my family. Now, what they did before I was born is on them, because I know my aunts and uncles may have a totally different perspective of what the family looked like. But when I came, I didn't experience that. But that's also why when asked the longest grudge, it's to myself, because I couldn't move past something that I had inflicted on me. So I would really say it was learned like later in life. I think I learned holding grudges from like childhood friendships and stuff like that.
So when you say I'm sorry, I know,
No, go ahead.
when you say you learned it, did you learn it because someone held a grudge against you?
I just watch people. I've always been like this. Like, I've always been kind of the kid over to the side watching everybody.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do think it's a combination of all of those things. I think there's an innate nature in humans to be self-centered, not like arrogant, kind of, self-centered in that way, but very self-driven. So we're always thinking about, how does something affect me? What did this do to me? And, this is my problem. So anytime we experience something, is going to come from a slanted lens like that. And then, of course, if we observe, a mother and a sister haven't spoken to each other in 10 years, you don't know why they are not speaking, or we don't ever go to, our uncle's house or stuff like that. And then on top of that, things that we actually experience with ourselves, I believe that stuff comes a little bit later. So I think we learn, there's the innate part of us about being self-centered. We see things that happen with the adults in our family, but we learn how to do that stuff because of what we observed. And that can be either through friendships, so we've observed our friends hold grudges, or somebody held one against us, and now we know what that feels like. We may not have a word for what we're doing, but we know what it is, because who's not heard, I don't want to be your friend anymore, and, when you were young, that kind of stuff. So I think it's a layered effect with all of them.
And let me give a disclaimer to the interns. Guys, we're not saying that you can't put these boundaries in place where you do stop talking to people. We're saying when conflict resolution is not something that you're trying to do. We're saying that you just automatically go to holding a grudge, whether it's the quick cutoff or the gradual. That's what we're saying. So you can definitely set a boundary of not having people in your life if they are toxic or dysfunctional.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So do you all think holding a grudge is harmful?
Yeah.
To the person holding the grudge?
It can be harmful to both, everybody. But I think it keeps you stuck. Like, and who got time to do that? Do we see what's happening in this world? It's enough going on without you inflicting harm on yourself.
So I think for me, it's a little bit more nuanced. I think that and what I mean by that, I think you have to decide on whether you are holding a grudge or active in non-forgiveness. Because if I've chosen, like setting a boundary, non-forgiveness, then I am able to move on. And because I've made a decision about whatever it was that happened between us, not affecting me anymore. But if I'm holding on to resentment, bitterness, anger, whatever, then yes, I think it is harmful to you because it does keep you stuck and keeps you kind of wrapped up in the past.
Yeah. But even in what you're saying, I don't feel like that's unforgiveness or non-forgiveness. I feel that you've come to grips with the situation and you've realized that this situation does not serve me. So why would I remain in something that is emotionally bad, toxic, dysfunctional for me? So I feel like if you were holding the grudge, then you still would be not forgiving the person. You're still like holding this against. No, I'm not holding nothing against you. It's the fact that you did this to me. It was unacceptable and it's not something that we can reconcile.
Then how would you define non-forgiveness?
Non-forgiveness would be me still holding on to the fact that you did this to me. I'm still in victim mindset. I'm still the person that's been wronged. And I'm like, I can't ever get over this. But I'm over it. I've made peace with the situation. I feel the feelings. I understand that this is what happened in this situation. I'm not holding you accountable to anything. You did this. I did this. This is what ended up resulting in this situation. So it's not me still, because, we've heard the whole saying, forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. So I don't even technically need that person. I don't need that whole clarity thing because, that irritates the crap out of me when people say they need clarity. I got to go dig up this 75-year-old relationship and blah. You don't always need that. Yeah, there are certain situations where you do need that. But for me, when I conceptualize it, I have to have forgiveness towards the other person, or I feel like I'm still holding on to something. Like what within me is saying, I can't forgive this situation.
So what I think what it sounds like is you believe unforgiveness is acceptance.
No, I don't believe in keeping unforgiveness. I believe in having
of acceptance.
I believe in having forgiveness and acceptance.
Oh, okay.
I'm a person that believes in forgive and move forward. Okay. Not forgive and forget. I don't believe in that, because you need to learn your lesson. You know what I'm saying? You need to learn. I went to this healer a few weeks ago, and he explained it really great. So imagine you have a water bottle, and the things that you have gone through are the water. They are the experience. They are the lesson. But then you imagine that the emotion part of it is the bottle itself. Mm-hmm. So every time that you need to go through something, you have to go through the bottle. But you don't have to re-experience the emotion and relive it in order for you to know what happened to you and get the meat and potatoes of what went on. I said, you better be out here, you little Hawaiian man. Okay. So I had never conceptualized it like that, but it's such a clear cut thing, because we drink water or whatever beverage in containers. So I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And he was saying that when you aren't able to forgive, it's like you keep want to bust your head up against this bottle instead of just saying, let me take the water out and ingest it. That sort of thing. So that's kind of how my mind has changed from that.
Okay. Well, I mean, technically, when we hold on to grudges, it doesn't solve the problem. True. It just removes you and the person from each other, because it don't even remove you from the situation, because you're still ruminating, like you were saying earlier, on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a mental prison.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Okay. I mean, I disagree.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but that's just kind of one of those things. We're not going to always have the same theoretical approach. But I mean, I hear where you're coming from, though.
Yeah,
I just think it's I think you can move on from a situation without having to forgive what the other person did, because it's the self work that I'm doing about, like you said, acknowledging what I did and what my part in the situation was. But I don't necessarily have to have anything in relation to them. That's just kind of my philosophy about it.
I think we're saying the exact same thing, to be honest.
It really actually sounds like y'all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's really stuck on the word.
I'm not one that necessarily believes in either of them, but I do believe if a person accepts the situation and what they experience from the situation, you can still move on without having to have closure or clarity or whatever that is. But I do believe that when people accept it, you can still move on. It doesn't negate the fact that it happened. It doesn't negate the fact that someone has wronged you, or a situation or whatever. It just means that you've accepted it and you can move on.
Yeah, I think we're all explaining it in 3 different ways to where the interns will be able to be like, oh, that makes sense from her perspective, or oh, that makes sense from each of our perspectives. But I really honestly feel like we are saying the exact same thing, just in different ways.
Okay.
Yeah. So people who are prone to hold grudges, like what type of personality do you think they have? So just for an example, I think jealous people are prone to hold grudges.
Yeah.
Sensitive people. Well, I don't really know what sensitive means, but I'll just say people who are a little bit more emotional. Oh, that sounds worse.
I think people that tend to be envious of others.
And notice, envious and jealousy is 2 different things. So that's why she brought that in. So don't say, well, Dr. Jones-Hodge just said jealous.
Yeah, I think very self-critical people tend to be jealous. Tend to hold grudges. Just because, again, it's about, well, we're self-centered. So then, it goes back to the idea of, okay, well, one of the examples of one of the things that I was reading was talking about if you meet up with a friend and y'all have lunch or something and that person brings up some event that happened 10, 15 years ago. And it's like, well, why didn't you want to do this with me? Or why didn't you say this to me? Or why didn't we do this together? So then that person takes that situation and starts to, well, there must be something deficient within me.
So on that note, make sure when you have friends, close friends, best friends, acquaintances, whatever category they're in, make sure that like you understand that they are allowed to have other friends, do things with other friends. And it doesn't mean that it has anything to do with you. But then people break up their friendships and hold a grudge because their friend decided to do something without them. Even if it's your best friend, Dr. Strickland don't do everything with me. And Dr. Wall don't do everything with her best friend, but and vice versa. So the thing about it is, y'all don't be out here being territorial and holding grudges and ending because good relationships are hard to find.
Yeah, that is very true.
So another one I think is a good one to bring up is impulsive people.
Yeah,
because impulsive people, it's like they don't think things through. And all of us can have some impulsivity to us at times. But if your just personality is impulsive, or a part of your personality is just to be impulsive, you got to learn how to slow down and think things through before making decisions.
Yeah. I think people that don't tend to think critically also can be prone to holding grudges because they don't really assess what the reality of the situation was. They just go with what their interpretation is.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Versus like really breaking it down. On top of that, I would say, I guess, I don't know if it's in the same line as sensitive, but, I'm thinking shy people or I don't know if shy is the right word.
Socially inept.
That. Because I don't have the wherewithal to engage in that type of conversation or discussion with you, even though I know what I'm feeling. But because I don't have the language to bring it to your attention, then I just kind of sit in my stuff.
Yeah.
I think another one is validation seekers. People people really don't have a tendency all the time to live their truth. So they're kind of stuck in their head with these expectations, assumptions like we were talking about earlier. And so it's like, well, this didn't go the way I wanted to go. So now I got to make you pay. Or with the validation part, it's like, well, they didn't do what I needed them to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, did you tell them that that's what you needed?
Yeah.
And the reality is no, because a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable.
That's a big key. That a lot of people don't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah, regardless of the reason.
Yeah,
we're not getting into the reasons of it, but that's hard.
Yeah, and I was also kind of, it's a broad category, but kind of like that type A alpha personality, narcissistic type of traits, that because of the idea that I can do no wrong and I know everything, and that I'm gonna hold it against you if you try to bring down my ego, or if you try to like kind of infiltrate me. You become on my hit list at that point.
Yeah,
come on, cognitive dissonance.
That too. A lot of that.
Yeah,
a lot of that.
Yeah,
anxious petty people.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I was going to say negative people. We were negative, anxious, and petty.
Yep, all of that.
Yeah,
for sure. What type of people do you guys think are not prone to grudges?
I would say people who have a more positive outlook on life, because they see the good in everybody. So even if there was a person who their best friend did go hang out with someone, they're not going to see it as, it was a dig toward me, or they were, whatever. They're going to be, oh, girl, yes, go hang out with your friends, honey. We can hang out tomorrow.
Okay. I would also say people that have had practice, in having difficult conversations, conflict resolution, and that practice can come through like education, or actual experience, but I think people that are open to like learning how to self-improve, that having that practice allows them to really hold self accountable, hold other accountable when necessary, so that, you know, a situation doesn't even have to get to a point where it becomes a grudge.
Yeah.
I think people who are able to be introspective and emotionally regulate themselves, that's huge. You know, prime example, you know, babies have a tendency to cry when they need something. But there comes a point in a baby's development where they learn to self-soothe. Now, no, we're not saying that you need to walk around and suck your thumb or something like that. But essentially, that is a form of emotional regulation, need regulation. And that should develop as the individual develops. And people sometimes lack that.
I agree with that. And I also think it's people who, as both of you ladies have already said, have done the work to understand who they are and understand that when everything is not about you. And
that part, those words.
Yes.
Okay. So then physically, what do you guys see that manifests with grudge holding?
Physically.
Because we've talked before about, you know, emotions manifest themselves somatically. So then, like, what?
I would say stomach pains, because it's stressful, especially depending on the relationship. It's stressful, so it can be stomach pains, it can be headaches, it can be aches and back pains and everything that, you know, all of a sudden you start having, and it's like, wait, where's that coming from? Think about it emotionally. What's going on with you?
Yeah. I would say heart related issues as well as high blood pressure. You know, because you're always in this state of like, I don't know how to
fight.
Fight. Yes. Fight or flight, fawn, freeze. Yeah. So fight.
Okay. Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I can't think of anything else to add to that, you know.
And you know what? For some, because of the anxiety part, start developing trichotillomania or hair pulling, nail biting, you know, things of that nature as well.
Like tics. Yes.
Angry.
Oh, yeah.
Because anger is a very visual emotion. Yeah. They just seem like stank people.
And they become aggressive. They can become aggressive.
Yes.
So I know that's not a physical, but I think in their body they feel the aggression.
Oh, yeah.
But what we see is the aggression.
What you looking at? Who, ma'am? Yeah. Calm down, Craig.
Yeah. Okay.
And so with holding those grudges, there are things that could be said. There are things that could be done, vindictive behaviors that happen. And then a lot of times when people think that it's time to reconcile the relationship, then they have to start making these amends and, you know, apologizing and things like that. So we have to learn how to not continue to engage in behaviors and vindictive behaviors that's going to cause us to have to continue to apologize or make an amends. That was I think that was one of the things that helped me to stop being so temperamental, because I got sick of apologizing. I was like, look, I'm not giving, because if I'm wrong, I don't have a problem telling you I'm wrong, and I apologize, and you know, whatever. But I got sick. I was like, I just can't keep doing this. So I was like, I need to change something, because I'm always hurting somebody's feelings.
It's hard. Like, it goes back to that vulnerable thing I was talking about. Even if you are not saying that you were holding a grudge, but even if you are the grudge holder, are you then going to want to be more vulnerable to go and apologize to people like that? That's a lot of energy.
It is.
Yeah. So when it comes to making amends, the person who initiates, the grudge holder or the believer of the instigation of the grudge?
I believe it's whoever realizes it first to be honest. Because I think sometimes even grudge holding is not conscious. It's just sometimes a natural reaction, and you wake up one day and you're like, why am I acting like this? And then, that's when you realize, or you do the work. But then the person who could have done or might not have done something, once they see you acting different, like if we talking about true relationships, like people that you really care about, once you realize it, you try to make amends, you try to have those conversations. Now realize it may not be able to reconcile. Like I have an individual where something similar like this happened, and y'all know this individual, and we didn't reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what it is. I was sad to see that relationship in that way, but at the same time I was like, okay, this is what it needs to be, so that I'm not subjecting myself to the bad behavior that this person is showing.
Well, I think it depends on the situation. And the reason why I say that is because y'all both know my specialty area. So, all of you know my specialty areas with addiction and sex offenders, even though I got to leave sex offenders off because they don't need to do anything but get better.
Yeah.
But with substance abuse, usually the addict is the one to make amends. Now, granted, I'm not saying that family members don't do things that they need to apologize for. So then let me explain the difference between apology and amends. So apologizing to someone is you apologize and there's typically no action that needs to come after that. But with amends, their apology is a part of the amends, but there also needs to have some action behind it. So it's almost like, for those of you who are Christians, it's almost like repenting to God. When you repent and you ask God to forgive you, you repent with the intention to change. That's what an amends is. You have some sort of behavior to change. So back to my substance abuse. When it comes to substance abuse, the addict is usually the one who needs to make the amends because they've typically done something, stole, lied, cheated, the list can go on and on. With the family members, I'm not saying that they don't need to make an amends, but a lot of times it's because they've acted out of their pissed off feeling that requires them to need to apologize. And, it just kind of depends on how they go.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation and the person and the relationship, on who does what when. So I don't think that there's any rule on that. And I also think it kind of depends on the desire. Do I desire myself amends? Do I desire, like all of y'all have said, do I desire this relationship? So if I do, then the likelihood that I will receive an attempt for amends, or my level of going to make one, if I'm the person that did this to somebody else, is a little bit higher.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's some ways that y'all feel amends need to be made?
Well, there are 3 types of amends. One is an indirect amends, which is when ways you can repair damage that cannot be reversed. And this situation, you would work toward redemption by selfless acts. So, for example, if you injured someone in a car accident, you would then volunteer at like maybe a handicap school or become an organ donor. There's direct amends. You take personal responsibility for your actions and address the person you've wronged. And this one is uncomfortable because this is the one you actually go to the person and begin to discuss the actions and be honest.
Or family, if the person is no longer here.
Yes. And this one, you also have to work on finding a solution to truly reconcile with the person. And you do this with each other. You don't necessarily have to come up with a reconciliation plan or solution by yourself. And then the other one is the living amends. And this is the best way to show others as well as yourself that you've changed, because this one is that part where you actually change your behavior. So I'll just use addicts as the example. Family members get tired of hearing from addicts is that they're sorry, I won't do it again, I'll stop drinking, I'll stop using drugs. They don't want to hear it anymore. So what happens is, you to make a living amends, you just start being sober and just live a sober life and stop engaging in said addiction.
I think they all hold different weight for different situations, but all appropriate.
Yeah.
It's so much going on in the world right now, and we could all use some extra support. At Balance Beacon, we offer counseling services for individuals, couples, families, and groups. If you're in Texas, give us a call at 214-396-6503 or visit our website at www.balancebeacon.com for more information.
So what are some of the ways that they can show up in those amends? What are some things that you feel would be healthy options to actually bring that amends to fruition? I think expressing how you feel and think things so the interns kind of know how to do it,
I think one of the things is practicing empathy, engaging and understanding that a person may be experiencing something that's outside of your purview, and you're not empathizing with where this person potentially could be, because again, you're kind of caught up in your own head and your own thought process. So stepping outside of yourself and looking at the situation as objectively as you can would be a first step.
I also think before doing that, to talk to someone about how to have a vulnerable conversation without sounding or being manipulative. I'm going back to addiction. Because you have to remember, family members have heard this a lot and they've been manipulated by you a lot. So everything that you say to them, their ears are sensitive to manipulation. So
I agree with it. I have a client actually who is the significant other of someone really struggling in their addiction. And this client ended up, getting COVID. She relayed the information to everybody that you're supposed to. This individual significant other used the COVID as his excuse to, use, and then blamed her for not being safer. And I was like, oh, I said, and how does that make you feel? Because she's the enabler, in his family of people. The significant other is the enabler. So, you have to break all of that stuff down, but it happens on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And see, so in that example, if once he decided to get sober and wanted to make an amends, he's going to have to do it in a way that does not sound manipulative, controlling, like he's trying to swindle her into, anything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. All that.
I think another important one is setting boundaries, which we've already said. So I was like, let me go and throw that one out there. Setting boundaries is important. Know what your boundaries are. Also give the other individual and whoever you are in this equation the opportunity to also set their boundaries, because there may come to light that what you actually were holding a grudge for, that's not what actually happened.
Yeah.
And I would also add to that, if you're the one initiating and if you're the one that's being approached, because I'm assuming some sort of conversation would have been had to say, okay, we need to talk or something like that. Know what you want to come out of this conversation. Like if you are going into this conversation or this discussion with the intentions on reconciling, or if you are not, but and understand that both of you may have two different ideas of what you want. And either way, it has to be accepted.
Yeah. I did want to give the interns a good read. It's not necessarily specifically about breaking grudges or making amends, but it's more so along the lines of how you see yourself. And so it's called Breaking Free from the Victim Trap, Reclaiming Your Personal Power by Diane Zimberoff. And I feel like this is a really good book for people who may be holding a grudge, may be experiencing the effects of someone holding a grudge, to kind of just take your power back in whatever the situation is and put some initiative to whatever you are wanting to do.
Well, we normally end off with a quote.
And our quote reads, "Resentment and grudges are things we dare not collect in our spirits, for they will spoil and rot, producing poison that will contaminate our words as well as our actions."
Must be this volume control.
So, okay, interns, process your notes. Be sure to catch us next session and find us on all major platforms at the RePsychled Podcast.
If you're a new intern, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Thanks for listening. And remember, we are shifting and reshaping our psyche through healing conversations and connections, one discussion at a time.